Good evening and welcome to Employment Matters Committee meeting. We are being live streamed, so if everyone can speak into their mics, I'd appreciate that, please. Thank you. First order of business is apologies for absence. Do we have any, please? Councillor Turpin.
Apologies from Councillor Williams, who I'm substituting for.
Thank you very much. There are no other apologies. Record of the meeting, item 2. Do members agree to approve the record of the meeting of the committee held on the 30th of April 26 and to also note the record of the meeting of the JCC committee held on the 30th of April 26? Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Urgent matters, there isn't any. Declarations, disclosable pecuniary interests and other significant interests. Councillor Hamilton.
I'm a member of the National Education Union.
Councillor Peake.
I'm a member of Unison.
And Councillor Cook.
I'm a member of the NAHT.
Thank you. Any other declarations? And I am also a member of the ASLEF Trade Union. We move on to the first order of business, item 5, organisational change. Nicola, to introduce, please.
Thank you, Chair. So this report details the new reorganisations of services and transfers under the 2P regulations for the period 1st of October 2025 to the 31st of March 2026. This report can be cross-referenced with the early retirement and redundancy payment reports, which details the financial costs of retirement and redundancy, some of which may be because of organisational change. The organisational change activity included in this period. There was 2P transfers in from Medway North to Medway Council. This included green spaces and facilities management with a transfer date of the 1st of April 2026. And following that, there was subsequent restructuring in facilities management as a consequence of the new responsibilities from the 2P transfer. There was creation of new strategic service managers and service manager posts within the RCE Directorate and a movement of different service areas to new line management with no changes for staff and no redundancies. There was the transfer out of Apner Castle and Temple Manor to English Heritage from the 1st of April 2026. There have been changes in the Macmillan team funding and a new crisis and resilience fund has been introduced, and it's anticipated that the staff will be redeployed into that new team. There's also been movement of adult social care front door telephony from our CAB service to directly within the adult social care service. Again, there's been no staff changes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any member? Councillor Hackwell.
Thank you, Nicola. Thank you for the report. A couple of things, really. With regard to Apner Castle and Temple Manor, do we know what strategic or advantages there was to, or why we've done it? I mean, I know it was a cabinet decision, but was there any real reason why we've taken Medway employees away from those two important, well, not so much Temple Manor, but certainly Apner Castle was an important tourist trap for us. So I'd like to understand a bit if we can. I haven't read the papers and maybe I should have read the cabinet papers, but I haven't.
Yeah, I think that's a question for cabinet.
Yeah, maybe.
Well,
yeah, maybe. And the other thing is, with the people transferring from Medway North, and you say they're coming over on their terms and conditions under TUPE, is it going to be more advantageous for them, or will it be disadvantageous for them to transfer to the Medway terms and conditions? I mean, will they get the same amount of holidays as they currently got in North, or will they get more holidays? Like Christmas Eve, everybody gets off in Medway Council, etc. Is it more advantageous for them to come over to, and therefore would you expect most of them to be transferring? That's a question. And I think I'll ask, and the Macmillan team, was it just purely the funding that made them redundant, rather than because I thought their service they gave was quite outstanding when they were working in the team. So I'd like to just explore whether it was just purely Macmillan itself, well, charity Macmillan itself stopped the funding that has made that decision. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sure we can pick this up, Nicola, but obviously I'm sure that you don't know the decision on the Apner Castle, and yeah. But Nicola, did you want to answer Councillor Hackwell, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. No, I don't know the strategic reasons for Upnor Castle. What I do know, there was 2 affected members of staff who would have to be transferred with the service, but they haven't. We've redeployed them within Medway Council to other roles. In terms of Norse, all the staff have to be transferred on their existing terms and conditions. Some of those staff would have originally been with Medway Council before they got transferred out. So we now have a situation when we've got numbers of staff on various different types of terms and conditions. The next phase is to look at harmonisation of those terms and conditions. Conversations and prep work is a go at the moment. Funny enough, I asked the question the other day, what's similar, what's different, how much of an impact is this? I don't know the answer to that now. That's something that we're working on at the moment. And Macmillan. So my understanding is the way that Macmillan is structured has changed and the funding has been removed. So yes, they provide a fantastic service. No one wanted to see that go, but it was purely a funding matter.
Thank you. Any other member? No. Councillor Fern?
Thank you, Chair. So, a couple of questions. So, in terms of the staff consultation, can the council sort of satisfied that the 1 week period was enough to go through all of, to take that in? Were you satisfied that that was sufficient period of time?
Sorry, Councillor Fern, for which one specifically?
Sorry, I wrote all these down and then to get the page number. Just
So this was the reorganisation of the senior leadership team in Regeneration, Culture and Environment. Is that correct? So my understanding is that as this was the senior team, there was a lot of informal conversation. They were involved in thinking about the redesign and what that might look like. So when it came to consulting with them, it wasn't felt that a long consultation period was required. If any of those staff had said we would like longer, then we would have extended that consultation period. But everyone was happy for that to happen fairly quickly.
Okay, thanks, Nicola. And the other one was, it does say in there about that part of the rationale for the restructure of some of this was for the local government reorganisation, but as the final structures sort of not, and responsibilities are not finally settled yet, what assurances are there that there won't be need to repeat similar again and additional costs and disruption to staff?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Fern. That's a good question. So we are doing minimal change at the moment in light of local government reorganisation. And really the change in terms of internal is to build capacity within the system so that we're in a best position to then go in and deal with the changes that are required to get us into the new unitary. So part of the business case around creating capacity at the senior leadership level was one based on spans of control. They were creaking, and compared to others, it's very clear that we need to be consistent. So we have a number of strategic service managers in other business areas with similar capacity. So we had to do a job evaluation, if you like, on those particular roles. And there isn't intended now for us to do anything in terms of internal organisational change other than harmonisation. So we're weeks away from a decision as to what that looks like. The only kind of movement will be because we've got a bigger demand coming in, and the structure is in need of capacity. That would be our only real reason really to be moving any big changes at this particular time.
Okay, just one final question regarding the culture and libraries about the proposal for the 4 new head of services. Why are we top? What's the need for being top heavy? Why not further down the line?
So there was some movement across RCE, I would say perhaps last year now, around some of the services switching. And at the time, we wanted to align RCE to the rest of the organisation. So within BSD and particularly CNA, we already have strategic service managers. RCE had 2, which was in housing and planning. And the kind of areas around the culture and community side, they were working through different models at the time, and they then reshuffled some stuff. So climate change, for example, went to one of our service managers. So as the breadth of those areas grew, we needed to build in that capacity. So it was largely down to that. And because we had some senior leadership team movements, we had a new director come in. We didn't have our assistant director in. Obviously, that was somebody who's been replaced now. We needed to wait to get some stability across the director and assistant director before we could look at what that looked like underneath. So I wouldn't say it was necessary building up that capacity at a senior level. It was creating structures where spans of control were relevant and consistent across the organisation, and it was long overdue. So rather than it being a knee-jerk, it had been worked on for a period of time. It was just cementing in the layers before we got to that particular layer.
Thank you. Any other member at all? No, I'll move to Vice Chair then, please.
Thank you. Members are asked to note the present position and support arrangements for staff, and I've got that particular note about further details regarding the similarities and differences for the 2P arrangements for facilities management. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that seconded? Councillor Peake, is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Move on to item 6, early retirement and redundancy payments. Nicola, please.
Thank you, Chair. So again, a second regular report for information, presenting the decisions taken in relation to early retirement and severance payments for the period 1st of October 2025 to the 31st of March 2026. There were no redundancies in this period. We have been asked recently to report to this committee about requests for flexible retirement, and in this period there were 8 requests for flexible retirement and all were accepted. One of those employees chose not to proceed, and there were no requests sought to waive benefit reductions, so there were no additional costs to the council. Thank you.
Thank you. Any member? No, it's good that we've had no redundancy, so well done, everyone. So, Vice Chair, please.
Members are asked to note the report.
Thank you. Is that seconded? Councillor Peake again. Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Item 7, mileage rates and car user status policy changes. Sam, please.
Thank you, Chair. The Council's car and travel allowance policy is detailed within Appendix 1, which has been updated to reflect some recent changes. The report is for information and updates the policy on the recent HMRC increases in terms of the tax-free mileage rate, but also recommends some minor amendments to the current car user status policy to reflect changes recently brought about by practice. Thank you.
Thank you. Any member at all? Councillor Hatwell.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of things. One, why do you put the rates in the policy rather than a link to the government website? Because the government update based on fuel prices, though it's meant to only be March to March, if there's likely just a recent hike, they suddenly can increase it or decrease it, depends on what's going on with fuel. So for me, it would make more sense to say that the current, if you're happy with keeping what the government recommends as the rates, is actually put in that statement in the policy to say it's found available at the, because they do it from effective dates of from the 1st of March, or they change it to 1st of May or whatever. So that would make more sense. The only other thing I did feel was it sounds a bit complicated for me to ask people to take mileage away from home and add mileage on if they come further away. Personally, where I worked, you got your mileage from your permanent place of work. So it would be Gunwharf, for example. But if you had to live in Whitstable and going to Birmingham, you could only claim from Gunwharf. If you happen to live in Gravesend and going to Birmingham, you could still claim from Gunwharf and Maiden, because it just made it fair, easier for people. Otherwise, you get people that are proving saying, well, actually, it's less miles because you live in Whitstable and you've got to take 20 miles off. Or I just don't understand why you're making it so complicated for adding the mileage on and off. If it's a lot easier to calculate from a permanent place of work, in my opinion, anyway.
Yeah, it is quite complicated because I get mileage to work, but that's obviously from my house. If I did it from work to work, it would be 0 miles. So it's not as easy as a thing, is it? But I get your point. But yeah, Sam, did you want to respond?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Hackwell. So the reason the policy is not linked to the government website around the rates is because our policy doesn't align to that. So whilst we're applying the tax-free element of the HMRC uplift, we're on local terms, so it means we've got local differences in what we're paying. So this is one of the policies that is due a review. So just to give an example, just to give committee a bit more, the first 8,500 miles actually pays more than the government rate per mile. But then when you go over that, it pays less. But there is a supplement where you get a lump sum to supplement that. So it's quite a complex policy. We've got free car user statuses. We definitely don't need free. So it is long overdue review. We are waiting to see what the announcements is for LGR, because what we don't want to do is change this policy and then it creates a bigger harmonisation in terms of what the new unitary will require. So we're tweaking the policy to make it fair and make it right as far as we can go. But fundamentally, I think if we went out to consultation, many people would just say align it to the government kind of rates. Okay, so but we're not there yet. This policy is in need of a review. The element around where people can claim the mileage from, so contractually is from your permanent place of work. What we have now, though, is hybrid working, which isn't contractual. So people are still contractually, for example, required to work out of Wharf, albeit they might have the flexibility to have some home working days. So there is a bit of a discrepancy, as the trade union colleagues mentioned, around if somebody is predominantly at home the majority of the time, should that be something that is classed as their home working place? But contractually, we haven't made any contract changes. This is kind of a custom and practice that came out of COVID, and it's a hybrid working model that we've done for a period of time. And with Wharf now in its refurbishment, it does mean that people are working out of other locations like Compass House or Pembroke. We're working on travel plan as part of the refurbishment of Wharf, and part of that will pick up our ways of working. So the plan is to make it simple, not complicate it. I think it's simple at the moment, but because people are working in different work patterns because of the closure, it just makes it a bit more complicated for people. So we're working on individual cases. It is from your place of work, but we're not going to make people jump through hoops to recalculate stuff if it's not necessary. But contractually, it is from your permanent place of work.
Thank you. Do you come back on that at all, Councillor? Well, thank you. Any other member at all? Councillor Hamilton?
I just want to look at the EV salary sacrifice scheme. So late last year, the any new EV salary sacrifice schemes for academy trusts were put on hold. They were paused. And whilst it's academy trusts, it's Department for Education, I'm just wondering if potentially we might see some movement around salary sacrifice schemes across the public sector, potentially in local government, and have we thought about what implications that might be for employees here? It is a very speculative question, but given that they've been put on hold in another part of the public sector, I'm just wondering if there might be some implications moving forward for our employees.
Sam, do you want
Very speculative, Sam.
Yeah, so there's always going to be a potential that will creep across as a concern. Most definitely, I would say the companies that are offering this kind of service are very much on the selling point at the moment. So we have a lot of companies contact us, particularly those who have large contracts with the NHS, for example, where they're looking to grow that kind of capacity and lock people into contracts. Most definitely, from our point around our people promise, this is a good benefit for people. People are maximising it, they're enjoying it. So if it did creep across, it wouldn't be without challenge and concern in that way. So we're not sitting here thinking it's something we would just accept. And I think, again, across the public sector, this is probably one of the perks that you get because the salary isn't comparable. So, when we're offsetting those benefits against some of the salary due with private companies, then we would be lobbying to keep things like this as well as our other salary sacrifice schemes. But noting what happened with childcare arrangements, then anything could happen. So, it's a watching brief, really.
No, thank you for that. That would be a great disappointment to staff because there are many people who helps them manage their money and get a brand new car. So that would be very disappointing if that went. Councillor Turpin and then Councillor Peake, please. Councillor Turpin.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just going back to Councillor Hackwell's point, I think the point might have been slightly missed. I think because we were just debating it slightly before the meeting about what should work. So I think we were just talking about your mileage calculation is from the place of work, but we were thinking about the occasions when you would travel from home to a different location. I think the policy is that you have to subtract what you would normally do getting to work before you can claim. So I think I was agreeing with that. I think we were just having a slightly difference of opinions. That seems fair because you could sort of go to a meeting which is maybe only 2 miles from your house, but normally you would travel 15 miles. It seems unfair to profit from that situation when, as the taxpayer would, you're expecting that person, they've agreed to travel that distance to work every day. So it would seem unfair to then someone to sort of be paid for mileage that they're not actually doing. So I just wanted to clarify that
Sam.
was the case.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's absolutely the case. So if you're doing less miles than what your normal commute would be, you wouldn't be able to claim your mileage to cover that. And I think that's quite important, particularly when we came out of COVID, where we worked in a hybrid model across the county. We had workspaces that people could use. So if you lived down at the coast and you just needed a desk for the day, you could go into, say, Canterbury and work from there for the day. If we didn't have that kind of element within the policy, then people could generally claim that mileage and they'd be doing less miles to their normal commute and day of work. So yeah, that is in there. It is about a deduction. It's not complicated in the sense of most people will know how they get to work and what the mileage is. So it's quite a simple thing to do within the system when you're making the claim. So yeah, I wouldn't say it's complicated, but that's in there for that exact reason, and that's in the policy.
Thank you. Just on that, does the system pick that up automatically, or is it manual that the manager needs to remember where someone lives, etc., or does the system automatically pick up by postcode?
It's a manual check by the manager.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. It depends on how big the team is and
Yeah, I mean, there is checks that are put in place. So whilst the manager will sign off and verify that kind of claim, there are checks that be put in place. And those random checks, if somebody is found to be misclaiming mileage, then that would be a disciplinary concern for us.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor. Are you happy with that answer, Councillor Peake?
Yeah, I'm kind of just thinking out loud because it may not even be relevant. Interesting what you said, Councillor Turpin. I'm just thinking when I've claimed mileage before, so this is for a housing company, and I was working, say, an hour's drive away, and I was trying to remember now, did they tell me that I had to start it from my place of work? And I actually can't remember. If you just literally claimed for what you literally did, that's one approach. But then there's an assumption that we're all really honest and we're not picking the furthest one all the time, and that's why you got contractual places probably. And when it came to my workplace, to claim somewhere that was in the wrong direction when I can go on a more direct route, if anything, I'd be more honest to claim from home. And I'm just thinking that's sort of where it could get complex. Do we apply? But I presume that doesn't apply to our employees, and that's why you have a fixed point. That's one of the arguments, isn't it?
Yeah, so the deduction, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to go via that route. So it is just a deduction. So even if you was going in the opposite direction, you would just be deducting whatever that mileage the other way would be. So you'd still take your most relevant route, and there has been cases where, people travel by train, for example. So then how do you deduct the mileage if you're going by train? So there's nuances within the policy that give examples of how people can work that through. So that gets a little bit more complicated. But ultimately, it is still the direct route from A to B, and it's just the mileage that you would deduct from it, as opposed to having to take a long route to go around that way.
Okay, I mean,
Did you want to come back?
Yeah, sorry. Thank you. I know we're talking about mileage, but I recently claimed train fare because my health conditions. I actually said I do not want to drive to Canterbury. I would have thought twice at one point, but they paid me the train fare, so that was straightforward. The idea about having a hybrid working situation that's come up before. If you just had two, obviously if it could easily get out of hand, but I would have thought that was actually quite doable. So if you got a contract that says you work 2 days at home from work, normally on these days and other times in the office, so surely you could, I mean, maybe you said that you're going to do this anyway, but I would have thought it'd be quite easy to have 2 places of contractual work.
So when we went about our original policy around our ways of working, we put in work styles. The hybrid model was down to the service areas to determine what that work would look like. Because we're so diverse in our delivery, we couldn't just have one kind of approach that's going to fit everybody. So most definitely at the point when we brought the policy here and went through corporate management team, it was identified that we couldn't just say everybody's got to do 2 days, everyone's got to do 3 days. So the services determined what that would look like. I guess what we rapidly moved into then was a position where Wharf had to reduce in size. So we've never really got into a probably normal flow pattern of what is the capacity in the office and what would that work look like. So we've got some very flexible work patterns where perhaps people come in every other week because actually we don't have the capacity there, or they go somewhere else to another building and work. So it's quite difficult for us to confine that at the moment. That's why with our travel plan and our ways of working moving forward, once we know what the footprint is in Gunwharf around the refurbishment, we can be more, I suppose, more directive around those work styles. So rather than just have hybrid, there will be some principles. Hybrid is, for example, no less or no more than 2 days a week, rather than at the moment, you'd probably have some people that would define as a hybrid category, but maybe come into the office 3 times a quarter. Because they're not required to come in any more, but that would be the same as somebody coming in 3 times a week. And there's other things that would impact on this. So things like we don't have enough car parking spaces for everybody. But while we've got hybrid so loose, does that mean everybody gets a car parking space? That doesn't quite seem fair if someone's coming in 3 times a quarter compared to somebody coming in twice a week. So really this travel plan and how that's going to work is going to really unlock a lot of behaviours and the way we work moving across the piece once Gunwharf's open. So that was always the plan, always the ambition. But I think with Gunwharf closing as it did, we kind of just didn't get into that work plan. So that's what we're working on now.
Chair, I think it's one of these things you really don't know it until, was it you suck it up and see whatever the term is, you've got to just see how it falls out. Can I just move on to the rate? The 55p, because there was actually, this was debate, I think it was LBC or whatever, and they had a whole debate about it, and they made 55p sound like a standard, because obviously you're fitting with it, with the HMRC. Just out of curiosity, presumably this is a choice, we don't have to match that. There may be companies that won't pay that, and I am aware of that sometimes for certain jobs, they will offer a lot more higher percentage rate per hour as part of their perks.
And unfortunately, many companies offer less. So did you
Yeah.
want to come back on that?
Yeah, so just on the point of the 55p, that is what's tax-free. So it's not that we've changed our mileage rates to pay the 55p, it's what the individual gets as a tax-free payment. So it's slightly different, and I think there was quite a bit of debate and misunderstanding when it was first announced that everybody thought everybody's rates would have to rise to 55p, and that's not the case. So, you know, when we do a regular comparison with ours, like I say, we are considerably over if you're doing less than 8,500 miles, but then we're considerably less if you go over that, and that's why we've got the lump sum that supplements. So it doesn't correlate and match nicely, but you know, just to give you an example, if you've got an engine size of 1.2 cc, we're like plus 20 pence over what HMRC would pay. So it's quite favourable on the smaller engines and less miles, less favourable above. And again, you know, a comment was made at JCC around the climate change. We're still awarding really big guzzlers as opposed to thinking about people converting to electric, and goes back to the bicycle thing. So again, within the travel plan and then the mileage and what we do, we've got a number of considerations that need to go into the mix. And that's why we're working with the other teams across the council, like the climate change team, like the transport team, to really make sure we're incentivising the right behaviours and not just aligning because it's easy to do. So, you know, there will be a huge consultation on that. We will be talking to staff, we will talk with trade union colleagues, we will look at others and what they're doing, particularly in light of the LGR announcement. So quite a few things to go into consideration, and this is quite a huge piece of work. And if you look at our EMC forward agenda plan, this has been coming for a long time, and we keep having to defer it because it's quite complex and quite complicated, and we want to get it right.
Thank you. Any other member at all? No. Vice Chair, please.
Thank you. So just some feedback from our JCC that we had before this meeting. The unions welcome the policy. And then in the report, 3.4, they were pleased to see that an issue had been resolved. They were grateful for that. And in 4.1 of the report, they requested clarity about the staff affected. And then, as already mentioned, in page 18 of the policy. Clarity was requested about where mileage starts from, as we've discussed, especially those who are hybrid workers, but predominantly from home. So the recommendations are that members are asked to agree the new HMRC rates to be reflected in the car and travel allowances policy as set out in Appendix 1 to the report, and agree to the updates to the car user status policy to reflect changes in HR and management practice as set out in Appendix 2 to the report.
Thank you. Is that seconded? Councillor Peake, thank you. Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Move on to item 8, redeployment procedure. Harry, this is you, please.
Thank you, Chair. So we've updated our redeployment procedure, and in doing so have brought it into line with our current practice, which has actually moved ahead of where our current procedure stands. We've explicitly added now medical redeployment, which is a really important aspect of redeployment that wasn't in the current policy. And we've also provided greater clarity around priority order as well. Alongside some better guidance for both employees and managers, providing tools for more objective decision making, and we've made sure to benchmark against neighbouring local authorities and write in the procedure as well.
Thank you. Any member at all? Councillor Atwell.
Thank you, Chair. Just one question, or a couple of questions actually. Why does someone on a fixed term contract end up being sort of made redundant? I mean, my view of a fixed term contract, if you're on there for 3 years and 3 years turns up, why is it sort of deemed that they're being made redundant? Because I don't understand that. Why would there be a redundancy and therefore in redeployment? Why would they just not end a contract? Yeah, I know there might be some legal reasons. I know it does change that you can't, fixed term contracts can't be a contract. And the other thing I feel a little bit uncomfortable with is the procedure for people refusing if they're being made redundant. I'll take, for example, the Millen nurses that we talked about before. You might be in support of Millen because you've really got some passionate beliefs in supporting people with cancer, and if you move to this new team, you're not going to have that belief. I know there's so why would they not, if the Macmillan job's gone, why would they be forced? Because it says in here something like they may not get their full redundancy, etc., if they refuse a position. I'm not quite sure I agree with that, because people have got personal reasons.
Nicola, do you want to pick that up, please?
Thank you, Chair. So a fixed term contract is still a dismissal. And if somebody's been in a fixed term contract for 3 years, then they have a right to redundancy payment. And so there's that kind of aspect to it. But also we get some really great people that come and join us on fixed term contracts. And if we've got opportunities to redeploy them, you know, why wouldn't we take that opportunity as well? But there is kind of legal reasons why we would have to, you know, not treat them any less favourably than other employees. In terms of what we're talking about there in redundancy situation, it's about offers of suitable alternative employment. So as an employer, we are obliged, you know, we must look for suitable alternative employment. If an employee disagrees that a role isn't suitable, then there will be that discussion, firstly informally, could potentially become a written reasons as to why it's not suitable. What's important to remember is anybody subject to redeployment has a 4-week trial period in the new role, so there's an opportunity for people to kind of test the role out for themselves, you know, both the employee and the manager, figure out if it is a suitable alternative, because sometimes things on paper look like it, but in reality they're not. But if they genuinely believed it wasn't a suitable alternative, then they could present that argument and we would absolutely listen to that.
You happy with that? Any other member at all? Councillor Turpin?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just wanted to ask on 8.2.1 with regards to those that are sort of protected in a redundancy situation. There's sort of 6 listed there. Is that sort of, does that match pretty much across the board with sort of other employers? Because I was just thinking, sort of the last one there, you got bereaved partners paternity leave, so that would be within the 12 months, I assume, from at any point in that time. It's not related to just something that traumatic happening at birth. It could be within that 12 months, I assume, yeah. So I'm just thinking about any other, time when you could lose a partner and you could be off on compassionate leave, or if you've lost a child and you're off on compassionate leave, that perhaps they should be included in that list as well.
Thank you, Councillor. The list that's set out there is primarily a legal one. So because that list is specific to redundancy situations, those who are listed there are the ones with statutory redundancy protections. In terms of the other cases that you brought up, we would obviously look to put in as much support as we possibly could. That would include ensuring they had good access to leave, that they had good support, and also we would ensure that the that the redeployment procedure was still fair for them, and we would of course take those sorts of circumstances into account on an individual basis. It's just for that specific point in the policy, that's just a legal protection point.
Thank you. Any other member? Councillor Cook, go on.
Yeah, if I can just come on that a bit more, I think it's a really, really important point. And I was also drawn to the mention of 24 weeks in the paragraph after, obviously recognising that that's a legal definition around viability, but also recognising that viability practically is earlier than that now because of changes in neonatal care. And I'm curious about, for example, somebody could lose a baby sadly at the same gestation, but if that baby lived for a day, the person could suddenly have significantly different rights than if that sadly ended in a loss that was before birth. So I just wonder if, there's something there around 24 weeks and viability, or whether it is just actually that's so difficult to regulate that we have to go with the legal understanding. Thank you.
No, thank you, Harry.
Yeah, point well taken, Councillor, and it is a challenging one. What we want to try and avoid is making things too individualized, where there might be concerns around unfairness. And to your point, there is that challenge around how complicated it can become in terms of who has what rights and what protections we can put in place. That being said, though, it's something that I'm happy to take away, have a think about, and see if we can put something in place that's sort of aware of those kinds of situations. So I'll take that away as a point of feedback.
Yeah, thank you. That would be useful. Sam, do you want to come in here?
Yeah, it's a great point to raise. I think across all of our policies, when we start going into priority placements, the bigger the pool, the less priority people get. And I think we've got to balance that, haven't we? So, in terms of the good practice, we do follow the law. We do look at what other people are doing across Kent, particularly our counterparts through the HR network. And I think, it's a starting point, not an end point for us, I guess. And it's a change. We've got to put it in place. We want to strengthen the policy. Certainly within JCC, Nicola was talking about the culture we want within Medway, the kind of putting people first and looking after our folk. We do that well. We probably could be better at it, absolutely. And our policies are really leaning and trying to design themselves into doing that. So even if you haven't got that priority status around the placement, we still want to care for you and care for you well. And each circumstance will be individual to that individual and what they're going through at that time.
Do you want to come back? You're happy?
Very briefly, no, I really see all of that. I think it's, in my mind, it's something like it being 20 weeks rather than 24, just those 4 weeks making a significant difference, because somebody who has a sad loss at 23 weeks and isn't protected, and it's writing the policy in a way that then there isn't that grey area. Yeah, thank you, Chair.
Yeah, I think the key is that there is the law, which is the base, but we can go above that and be better. But Councillor Turpin?
Thanks, Chair, for letting me come back. And I just think Councillor Cook, you raised I'd got that highlighted as well. And I think it's I appreciate there always has to be some sort of cut-off point, but I think it's the discrepancy between the two. There's such a, it's like if it's, within the first 24 weeks, your protected period is 2 weeks, but if it's after, it's 18 months, and it's just such a big difference, I think, is the issue. And I'm just wondering if whether you could, I think your answer to my earlier question is that there'd be some flexibility or, definitely trying to work with the mother. And I think it's that 2 week thing, whether that can be somehow staged depending on the, I don't know whether you can judge someone that's lost a baby at 23 weeks and, like you say, at 18 weeks, I don't know, it just seems it's very difficult, isn't it, and complicated. But I think it's just that variance of 2 weeks and 18 months is so huge. It just does seem very unfair for a mother in that situation.
Nicola?
Thank you, Chair. I think we'd all hope that we wouldn't end up in this situation where there is more than one person, one that does have the higher level of protection than the other, and there not be other redeployment opportunities available. So it's not that we wouldn't redeploy those people. Of course, we would still do that. It may mean that somebody else within one of those criteria does have that greater protection. So I do hear all that. I think the reality of that actually happening is probably very small, but if that is in your situation, my colleagues have said, we absolutely would be supportive of anybody in that situation, and wouldn't want to be adding to any kind of stress, anxiety, etc. at that time.
Okay, thank you. If we'll take up that offer, Harry, if you come back and look to see at them points that were made that you said you'd work through, then I mean you can come back if you want, but I'll be that. Like I said earlier, it is a base, but if we can be better and try and look at different situations or how we can move forward. But I agree with both. I'll let you come in, Councillor Evans. But we need to adopt it.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo the same for pregnant people. Obviously, it's going to be that cut-off date is very arbitrary. And we have been able to look at things for other areas of policy around this with sensitivity. So I think hopefully we'll be able to come back with something that can accommodate quite a traumatic situation for people with sensitivity and caring and compassion.
Thank you. Is there any other member at all? Vice Chair, then, please.
Thank you. So the feedback from the previous JCC was that the policy was welcomed by the unions and that they welcomed the discussion that was able to be had in advance. There were concerns raised regarding the use of redeployment in cases where occupational health was needed, especially regarding those who couldn't return to their previous role where this was deemed impossible. And there was specific concerns about colleagues being notified when on the redeployment register. And then we just noted that likewise in this report, there's just a typo in 3.3 that needs readdressing. And then in terms of this meeting, we've got that additional recommendation of the request of further consideration around that 8.2.2 and appreciate that discussion. So members are asked to approve option A and adopt the revised redeployment procedure at Appendix A and its appendices, Appendix B to E for implementation in July, to note the key improvements in health and disability related redeployment as well as increased clarity throughout the procedure document as set out in the summary of changes at Appendix F, and asked to agree the provision of targeted communications and training for managers, especially those in positions of making frequent hiring decisions, to support consistency and cooperation with the revised procedure, ensuring redeployees are protected and treated fairly. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Is that seconded? Councillor Peake, is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much. Meeting closed. Thank you very much. And before 8 o'clock.